From the GRAYMAN briefing, this is a summary of recent developments regarding the Second Amendment, cybersecurity, protests, supply chain disruptions, national security, law and order, free speech, censorship, government oversight, and more. Now, the latest from GRAYMANbriefing.com. Here's this week's Sword, read out by Super Essie.
The U.S. issued a travel advisory for northern Mexico due to escalating violence. Court rulings challenge federal gun laws related to adults under 21. Trump signs multiple executive orders affecting national defense, education, and gender-related mutilations. Civil unrest includes protests from pro-life, pro-2A, and far-left groups, but now most actions across the country are shifting to anti-deportation related protests. Meanwhile, the U.S. increased pressure on Panama, Mexico, China, and Canada, leading to major concessions by Panama and Mexico. Authorities are also investigating murders linked to an extremist trans group. And finally, the NYPD stops pursuits. All this content is delivered in real time to GRAYMAN Briefing subscribers and compiled into a weekly document sent via email. Sign up for the brief at GRAYMANbriefing.com. That's gray with an A. Let's get started with national security. The U.S. consulate in Matamoros, Mexico, issued a security warning alerting American citizens about increased violence, including gun battles, IEDs, kidnappings, and organized crime near the Texas border. The State Department issued a do not travel advisory, urging those already in the region to leave as soon as possible. Officials further recommended travelers draft wills and leave DNA samples in the event of a worst-case scenario. Moving on, President Trump signed an executive order directing the development of a missile defense system referred to as the Iron Dome for America. The initiative aims to protect the U.S. from ballistic, hypersonic, and advanced cruise missile threats. It includes the acceleration of space-based sensors and interceptors, increased cooperation with allied nations, and a mandate to secure the supply chain using only U.S.-made components. The White House described it as a deterrent against foreign attacks. Moving on, Trump has also issued an executive order targeting antisemitism, reaffirming Executive Order 1389-9 and expanding measures to combat such harassment, particularly in higher education. The order directs government agencies to report within 60 days on legal avenues for prosecuting anti-Semitic acts. The order is purported to be a means to deport or revoke visas of foreign pro-Palestinian college students who unlawfully protested, things like vandalism, failed to disperse after an unlawful assembly was declared, and assaults. The order states that the federal government will use, quote, all available and appropriate legal tools to prosecute, remove, or otherwise hold to account the perpetrators of unlawful anti-Semitic harassment and violence, end quote. Unverified reports claim actions are already underway to fulfill the order, including the revocation of a visa of a Chinese national allegedly responsible for organizing multiple pro-Palestinian protests at UCLA. Now shifting into law and order. The New York City Police Department enacted a new vehicle pursuit policy on February 1st. It restricts high-speed chases to serious violent crimes. The policy excludes pursuits for traffic infractions, nonviolent misdemeanors, and many other violations. An internal review found that 25% of the more than 2,000 pursuits in 2024 resulted in accidents, injuries, or property damage, with 2/3 of pursuits stemming from routine traffic stops. Since that policy's implementation just a couple of days ago, NYPD pursuits have declined by 66%. Of course, this means that many people are just fleeing police when they're being stopped. So there's no telling how many violent criminals, how many people who got stopped on a basic violation but have other major crimes pending, maybe warrants or something, some sort of major crime they just committed. They're now escaping from police because police cannot chase them. That's New York City for you. Now shifting into government oversight, Trump signed an executive order titled Ending Radical Indoctrination in K-12 Schooling. This mandates that schools comply with federal laws protecting parental rights and prohibiting discriminatory teaching practices. The order highlights concerns over identity-based curriculum requirements and encourages schools to follow the Civil Rights Act, Title IX, and the Protection of Pupil Rights Amendment. It also reinstates the 1776 Commission to promote historical education in preparation for America's 250th anniversary. The White House advised that K-12 school administrations and curriculum have attempted to force students to accept ideologies without question or critical examination, saying minors are, quote, compelled to adopt identities as either victors or oppressors solely based on their skin color and other immutable characteristics, and made to question whether they were born in the wrong body, end quote. Moving on. Jumping now into civil unrest. In Arcadia, California, socialist activists affiliated with RevCom disrupted wildfire charity efforts, blocking donations and calling for a replacement of the capitalist system. In Santa Monica, 40 individuals were arrested for looting fire-evacuated homes, with some using emergency apps to track vacant properties. In Malibu, a suspect impersonated a firefighter attempting to burglarize mansions. In Raleigh, North Carolina, far-left activists protested outside the state Supreme Court over a Republican challenge to discard over 60,000 votes in an unresolved state election. Separately, on January 20th, pro-Palestinians marched to oppose Trump's policies, also there in Raleigh. In Portland, Oregon, Antifa and pro-illegal immigration activists disrupted ICE operations, protesting deportations. In St. Paul, Minnesota, transgender activists protested at the state capitol against Trump's policies regarding LGBT issues. In Washington, D.C., thousands of pro-life activists participated in the 52nd annual March for Life. Also of note, Trump pardoned activists convicted under the federal abortion clinic protest laws, calling their prosecution unjust. Separately, January 6 defendants were barred from the Capitol grounds under a new order from a federal judge. In Dallas, Texas, Latino activists staged a protest calling for the removal of border enforcement. In Seattle, Washington, 200 protesters, including transgender activists and Antifa members, stormed a Turning Point USA event advocating for women's rights. They broke windows, pulled fire alarms, and forced event organizers into police protection to be evacuated from the violence there. In Denver, Colorado, pro-Second Amendment activists rallied against proposed gun restrictions, urging lawmakers to protect their constitutional rights. In the state of Washington, transgender activists clashed with law enforcement at an event discussing gender issues, leading to multiple arrests. Now let's move into supply chain. Panama announced that it will not renew its 2017 agreement with the China's Belt and Road Initiative. It'll shift towards stronger ties with the U.S. This follows pressure from the U.S., including discussions on reacquiring control over the Panama Canal. The U.S. House introduced the Panama Canal Repurchase Act to authorize negotiations for claiming control, but it looks like Panama has already caved and will no longer cooperate with China once that initiative expires. Also, Mexico agreed to deploy 10,000 National Guard troops to its northern border in exchange for the U.S. delaying a 25% tariff on Mexican imports. The deal aims to reduce fentanyl trafficking and curb illegal immigration. Now moving into health and safety. Trump signed an executive order blocking federal funding for gender-affirming, or genitalia mutilation more correctly, what they call treatments for minors. The order defines such treatments as harmful and irreversible. Hospitals including Virginia Commonwealth, University Health, and Children's National in Washington, D.C. have halted these gender mutilation surgeries in response, though they are still having mental health support options still available. The New York Attorney General warned that compliance with the order could violate the state's anti-discrimination laws. So this is not a ban on chemical and surgical mutilations. It just means the federal government will not provide funds to healthcare facilities that provide those sort of options. Okay, now let's get out of that and move into domestic extremism. Authorities are investigating a series of violent crimes linked to the Zizians. There are at least 4 murders and 1 attempted murder across 3 states linked to the extremist transgender vegan death cult. The series of homicides in California, Pennsylvania, and Vermont are connected through individuals associated with the group known as a Bay Area-based collective with distinct trans-philosophical beliefs and vegan Sith ideals, whatever that is. In California, an 82-year-old landlord was attacked on two separate occasions, one where he was stabbed with a sword, and then before he could testify against the suspect, he was later killed. In Pennsylvania, a couple was found murdered in their home with emerging ties to a Vermont shooting where a Border Patrol agent was killed. The Vermont suspects were heavily armed and in tactical gear. There is a lot to unpack in these serial killings, maybe, including they, them, zir pronouns, blue sky account post, Antifa affiliations, Guy Fawkes masks, a death cult, multiple transgender suspects, the same firearm being used in multiple killings, a foreign national, and more. To see the brief and all the included sources on this story, join at thegraymanbriefing.com. Let's end today with the Second Amendment. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled that the federal law barring licensed gun dealers from selling handguns to adults aged 18 to 20 is unconstitutional. The court cited the Supreme Court's 2022 Bruin decision, which requires gun laws to align with historical traditions. The ruling could be appealed to the Supreme Court, which would determine its nationwide applicability. Other similar cases are under review in different circuits. That is all for this week. Thanks for listening, and as always, remain aware, be vigilant, and stay safe.
Get unredacted, real-time briefings sent via email and through the Telegram and Signal apps by joining the Grayman Briefing.